Welcome to the deep dive. We grab a big pile of source documents and really pull out the key stuff for you.
Yeah, the goal is you get the important insights without, you know, getting buried in information.
Exactly. And today we're going right to a huge source. Amazon.com Inc.'s annual report, the Form 10-K for the year ending December 31st, 2024.
This is it. Amazon's own words to the SEC and, well, to everyone, really.
Yeah.
About their business, the risks they see, their financials.
It's the official story. So our mission today is to kind of slice through all the legal and financial language.
And pull out the core narrative.
Yeah.
How does this giant actually work day to day? What challenges are they worried about?
And what do the numbers tell us? Where are they putting their money? How are they doing?
Let's dig in.
Okay, right on the cover page, we see the name, Amazon.com Inc., ticker AMZN on the NASDAQ, and it says they're a well-known seasoned issuer and a large accelerated filer. What does that actually signal?
Basically, it just confirms they're a big, established public company. They meet certain size thresholds. They file reports regularly. Good reporting history.
So reliable reporters, essentially.
Pretty much. And it confirms they're current on filings, including that Sarbanes-Oxley report on internal controls, which is, a big checkmark for financial integrity.
And the scale hits you immediately. Aggregate market value of stock held by non-affiliates. Over $1.8 trillion as of last June.
Trillion, with a T.
Yeah, and over 10.5 billion shares out there.
It's a mind-boggling scale. Really puts everything else in perspective.
The document also mentions some info, like directors and officers, is in a separate proxy statement coming later.
Yeah, that's standard stuff. They call it incorporation by reference. Keeps certain governance details grouped together.
Got it. So, okay, item one then jumps into the business itself, starts with their principles, invention, operational excellence.
And long-term thinking. Right.
Yeah.
And they serve, well, a lot more customer groups than you might first think.
Not just shoppers.
No. The list is consumers, sellers, developers, enterprises, content creators, advertisers, and even their own employees. 7 distinct groups.
And they manage all this through those 3 segments we always hear about.
Exactly. North America, International, and the big one, AWS, Amazon Web Services. That's how they structure and evaluate performance.
Let's break down the consumer part first. What does the 10K say there?
Well, it emphasizes selection, price, convenience, both online and their physical stores.
And the selection is vast.
Hundreds of millions of unique products sold by Amazon directly and by third-party sellers using their platform.
And you can access it all through websites, apps, Alexa.
Kindle, Fire devices, Echo, Ring, streaming services, their physical stores.
Yeah.
Everywhere. And they're creating their own media content, too.
Delivery must be a monster operation.
Oh, absolutely. Huge global fulfillment network, warehouses, sorting centers, delivery stations, plus their physical stores and digital delivery. And global customer service, too.
And Prime is key to that customer experience, right?
Definitely. They call it out specifically. Fast shipping, video streaming, all those bundled benefits. A major customer offering.
Okay, what about the sellers? That's a massive part of their marketplace, but Amazon isn't the seller in those cases.
That's a really crucial point they make. For those third-party sales, Amazon is not the seller of record.
So what is their role?
They provide the platform, the tools, the services, helping sellers list products, maybe use Amazon's fulfillment network, grow their business.
And they make money from fees.
Right. Fixed fees, percentage of sales, per unit fees, interest sometimes. It's a platform model. They enable the transaction.
Then there's AWS, the giant serving developers and enterprises.
Yeah, described as providing tech services on demand. Compute, storage, databases, analytics, machine learning, you name it.
For everyone from startups to governments.
Pretty much any organization. It's clearly a huge growth engine and a focus of their investment.
The report also lists content creators and advertisers separately.
Yep. Programs for authors, musicians, filmmakers, app developers to publish and sell their work. And advertising services too, helping sellers and others reach customers on Amazon's sites and apps.
It really paints a picture of this interconnected ecosystem.
Exactly, serving lots of different players who also interact with each other.
Which must mean competition is coming from, well, everywhere. How do they describe that landscape?
They're very blunt. It's rapidly evolving and intensely competitive.
Not just other online stores.
Oh no. They list competitors across basically every area they touch. physical retail, e-commerce, media companies, search engines, comparison sites, social networks,
Logistics companies, IT providers for cloud and AI, electronics makers.
grocery stores, advertising platforms, even healthcare now. It's a huge, sprawling, competitive map.
And the key factors they compete on.
For retail, it's what you'd expect. Selection, price, convenience. For services, like for sellers or AWS, it's more about quality, speed, reliability.
And getting customers to actually switch providers, right?
Yeah. Right. That willingness to change. And they acknowledge some competitors might have an edge.
How so?
Well, rivals, maybe in specific markets or new areas, could have more money, longer track records, more brand recognition, maybe more customers already.
So they might get better deals, price lower.
And that's more in tech or infrastructure or marketing.
Yeah.
Yeah. And the internet itself makes it easier for smaller players to jump in and for customers to shop around.
It sounds relentless. Constant pressure from all sides.
That's the picture they paint. New business models, new competitors, constant change.
Okay, the report also talks specifically about employees, their goal.
They state their objective is, quote, strive to be Earth's best employer.
And they mention things like pay, benefits, flexible work.
Talent development, training programs.
Yeah.
They highlight the Amazon Career Choice Program, specifically funding education for employees. It says over 240,000 people have used it globally.
They talk about safety, too.
Yeah, investments in facilities, new safety tech, ergonomics. They mention having a dedicated safety team using the science of safety. Emphasis on that area.
But there's also a section on labor unions.
There is. It explicitly notes that successful union drives could decrease their operational flexibility and negatively impact efficiency.
And their response could cause issues, too.
Right. It says the company's response to union efforts could potentially harm the business or its reputation. They're flagging it as a potential challenge.
The document lists key leaders, too. Andrew Jassy as CEO, Jeff Bezos as executive chair.
Yep. And highlights some recent changes, like Matthew Garman heading AWS since June 24, Douglas Harrington leading the stores business since July 22, plus other key execs like the CFO, controller, general counsel. Gives you a snapshot of the top team.
Okay, let's shift to item 1A. This is the risk factors section, right? Where companies lay out what could go wrong.
Exactly. It's the required disclosure of major potential headwinds. They preface it by saying these are things that could impact the business, but it's not, every possible risk.
And competition comes up again here, strongly.
Right at the top. They say competition continues to intensify. And they specifically mention new tech, like AI, machine learning, satellites, new devices, are all adding pressure.
They also detail risks around expansion. What's the worry there?
Well, when they jump into new markets or new types of products where they don't have a deep track record, there's a risk. Customers just won't adopt it.
Or they hit unexpected tech problems.
Yeah, leading to service failures.
Yeah.
Or maybe they pour huge amounts of money into something and it just doesn't become profitable or doesn't meet expectations.
Even sustainability efforts have risks.
They mention that, yes. Risk of failure or not meeting their own goals there, too.
International operations also get a big mention in the risks.
Huge part of the business, but they make it clear it's complex and costly. Setting up, developing, maintaining international ops takes a lot, and they might not turn profitable.
And the specific risks internationally.
It's a long list. Local economic conditions, political instability, complex government rules.
Like trade barriers, limits on foreign ownership.
Licensing requirements, rules about getting money out of the country, currency fluctuations, different privacy laws, consumer protection rules.
Plus, maybe less internet usage or spending compared to the U.S.
Right. Payment risks, challenges staffing and managing across distance, language, culture, and different labor environments, works, councils, unions are more common elsewhere. Plus, complying with anti-corruption laws globally.
And they specifically call out China and India? That seems significant.
Very. Because they're critical markets, but have really complex regulatory environments for foreign companies.
Restrictions on investment and operations in areas like internet, IT, retail, delivery.
Exactly. In both countries, content and product sales can be restricted too.
And they describe these complex structures they use to operate, like partnerships in China, an indirect stake in India.
Right. And they say they believe these setups comply with the law, but they flag the risk. Because these structures are unique, interpretations of the law could change.
Which could lead to fines, losing licenses, needing to restructure, or even shutting down parts of the business there.
That's the potential downside they lay out. And critically, they highlight their significant dependence on China-based sellers and suppliers.
For both selling on the platform and sourcing goods.
Yes. which makes them really vulnerable to any regulatory changes, trade issues, data security problems, economic shifts, or geopolitical tensions involving China.
Wow, that dependency sounds like a major vulnerability.
It's presented quite starkly. Another risk area is the variability in their retail business.
You mean like seasonality, the Q4 rush?
That's a big part of it. Demand swings wildly, not just with holidays, but also promotions, product launches, and external stuff too, the economy, inflation, natural disasters, geopolitics.
And that makes inventory tricky.
Hugely. Hard to forecast perfectly, so you risk having too much stock leading to markdowns, write-offs, or too little meaning you miss sales.
Plus, shipping costs go up during peak times.
Yeah, needing faster shipping, splitting orders, and just staffing up fulfillment centers and customer service for those peaks is tough. System interruptions from traffic spikes are another worry.
Okay, what about risks from sellers on their platform? Fraudulent activity.
Yes, they flag this. The legal ground rules for online platforms hosting third parties are still, well, evolving globally.
So sellers might collect payments but not ship, or ship fake stuff.
Or sell illegal or counterfeit goods, stolen items, violate IP. Amazon has policies against this, of course, but when sellers slip through,
It hurts Amazon's reputation and business.
and can lead to legal liability. They mention their A to Z guarantee, which pays customers back in these situations. The cost of that goes up as third-party sales grow, hitting their results.
Intellectual property is another risk area, both protecting their own and facing claims from others.
Right. Protecting their own IP, trademarks, patents, tech is vital, but they seem particularly focused on the risk of being accused of infringing other people's IP.
Because that leads to lawsuits.
Expensive lawsuits, yeah,
Yeah.
with unpredictable outcomes. Could mean paying huge damages or being forced by injunctions to change their business or stop selling certain things. A big risk in tech and media.
Foreign exchange rates, currency fluctuations also make the list.
Makes sense. With massive global operations, swings in exchange rates can really impact their reported results. Gains or losses on cash held overseas. Their exposure is huge.
Beyond those specifics, they mention general operating risks, like just the strain of growing so fast globally.
Right. It puts enormous pressure on management, staff, systems, financial controls. If they can't manage that growth effectively, it could hurt their reputation, limit future growth, hit the bottom line.
Dependency on third parties, like key suppliers, is another one.
Critical. They rely on important suppliers for content, tech, components. Some might be the only source.
And if that supplier has problems or stops supplying,
Big risk, especially if there's no long-term contract. Bankruptcies, disasters, geopolitics could interrupt supply. They specifically call out reliance on limited semiconductor suppliers, especially for AI chips like GPUs.
saying that could hurt their AI development and operations.
Yes, that's a specific vulnerability noted. Also, if suppliers violate laws or ethics standards, that can blow back on Amazon.
Commercial agreements and strategic partnerships carry risks too.
Yeah, providing complex services to other big businesses takes a lot of resources, might limit capacity elsewhere. Success might depend on the partner doing well, and there's risk if the services fail, leading to claims.
And finally, inventory risk comes up again here.
It's just a core retail challenge. Demand changes, product cycles are fast, items can spoil or have defects. Predicting trends is hard.
Leading back to those risks of overstocking or understocking.
Exactly. Markdowns, write-offs, lost sales. And some inventory needs big upfront payments and can't be returned easily, adds financial risk.
Okay, so intense competition, global expansion headaches, operational uncertainties, and layered on top is this evolving legal and regulatory world.
This seems like a huge and growing area of concern for them. They operate under general laws, sure, but also specific regulations for everything they do.
Internet, retail, cloud devices, AI, advertising, healthcare.
All of it. And laws are changing constantly worldwide. Tax, privacy, data security, competition law, consumer protection, labor, trade, payments.
And sometimes old laws don't neatly fit new tech like cloud or AI.
Exactly. Lots of uncertainty. And they see clearly they're subject to regular government reviews, investigations, legal actions.
Highlighting ongoing investigations and lawsuits about competition or consumer protection.
Yes. Related to their stores, fulfillment, Prime, AWS offerings, they mention the lawsuits from state AGs and the FTC.
Alleging things like price fixing, monopolization, consumer protection violations, seeking big damages and changes to their business.
Right. And Amazon's position, stated in the report, is they dispute these claims and will defend themselves vigorously.
They also mentioned data privacy investigations.
Yes, under evolving data laws globally, creates uncertainty about how regulators view their practices.
And this trend of regulating big tech platforms, gatekeepers,
They note that's increasing, leading to new rules, specifically targeting companies like them, which increases compliance costs and could limit how they operate.
the potential impact of unfavorable rulings or regulations sounds severe.
They warn it could mean huge costs, fines, civil or criminal liability, reduced demand, forced changes to their business, damage to reputation. And all the media and political scrutiny just amplifies these risks.
Beyond those big investigations, there's just the general risk of lawsuits across the board.
Right. As a giant global company, they're constantly dealing with legal claims, IP, tax, labor, commercial disputes, product liability. The number and scale grows with the business. Outcomes are unpredictable.
Legal costs, management distraction, negative publicity.
All part of it. And resolutions could involve big payouts or restrictions on what they can do.
The report lists some specific ongoing legal matters, too.
It does. That $746 million fine from Luxembourg's data authority back in 2021 over GDPR, which they're still fighting.
And a $1.13 billion fine from Italy's competition authority, also from 2021, about marketplace and logistics practices.
Yes, they paid that, but are appealing, trying to get it back. They dispute the finding.
Then there are patent lawsuits from Nokia, filed starting late 2023.
In multiple countries, yeah. Alleging patent infringement related to video tech and Prime Video, devices, Freebie, Twitch, voice assistants.
Seeking injunctions and damages. And some injunctions have been granted.
The report notes preliminary or final injunctions have issued in some cases. Amazon says they dispute the allegations.
Tax disputes, too. Luxembourg and India are mentioned.
Yes. Luxembourg questioning the tax basis for some intangible assets distributed back in 2022. They'll have to pay tax when assessed, but they expect to recoup it and dispute Luxembourg's position.
And India saying tax is owed on cloud service fees paid to Amazon US.
Right. They're paying the tax for now while it's disputed, which could be significant. They expect to get it back eventually. But if they lose, it could mean a big additional tax expense.
Plus, general tax risks, potential new taxes, penalties, difficulty complying with new reporting rules quickly enough.
It's undeniably a very complex and risky legal and regulatory environment for them.
Okay, let's pivot now. Let's look at the financials, items 7 and 8. How does the revenue break down?
Two main streams. Product sales, that's stuff they sell from their own inventory, and service sales, which is a big category.
What's in service sales?
They're cut from third-party seller transactions, AWS cloud revenue, advertising income, and subscriptions like Prime.
And how did growth look in 2024 across the segments?
Consolidated sales up 11%, North America grew 10%, international 9%, and AWS kept up strong growth, up 19%.
The foreign exchange rates were a drag.
Yeah, it knocked about $2.3 billion off the top line in 2024 due to currency movements.
Looking at costs, cost of sales is mainly products and shipping costs were huge.
Almost $96 billion in 2024.
Yeah.
Up significantly from 2023. They expected to keep rising, but hope to offset it with efficiency gains, optimizing the network, better supplier deals.
Fulfillment costs running warehouses, stores, customer service, payment processing also up.
Increased with sales and investments, yeah, though they mentioned efficiencies helped offset some of that.
Technology and infrastructure costs must be enormous, especially with AWS and these new ventures.
They are massive. Covers R&D payroll, website development, plus all the servers, data centers, networking gear, rent, power for AWS and everything else.
Including those new bets like the satellite network and autonomous vehicles.
Exactly. Those investments show up here. And they expect these costs to keep climbing as they hire more tech folks and build more infrastructure.
Sales and marketing costs actually dipped slightly in 2024.
Primarily due to lower payroll costs in that area, even though advertising spending itself went up. And they point out that things like Prime benefits and free shipping offers are really effective marketing, even if the costs aren't booked under sales and marketing.
Interest expense was down a bit in 24.
Yeah, mainly related to their debt and finance leases.
Speaking of which, they give figures for leases and debt.
As of year-end 2024, total lease liabilities were over $90 billion, mostly operating leases, and total long-term debt stood at $52.6 billion.
There's a line item called Other Income Expense Net that they say is volatile. Why?
Because it includes things that can swing wildly, like changes in the value of their stock investments and foreign currency gains or losses.
Like the Rivian investment.
That's the key example they highlight. A $1.6 billion loss recognized in 2024 from the change in Rivian stock value. That compares to a nearly $800 million gain the year before. big swing.
Income taxes, as you'd expect for a global giant, are complex.
Very. And variable. One thing they highlight is having $6.5 billion accrued for uncertain tax positions at the end of 2024.
Meaning taxes they might owe if their positions are challenged.
Essentially, yeah. It requires significant judgment to estimate. It's money set aside for potential tax bills where the outcome isn't certain.
Now, this seems really interesting. Significant changes to how they estimate depreciation starting in 2025.
This is a key piece, yes. Tells you something about their assets and maybe strategy. Two main changes effective January 1st, 2025.
Okay, what's the first one?
They're increasing the estimated useful life for certain heavy equipment from 10 years up to 13 years.
Which means spreading the cost over longer. So it boosts profits slightly.
Right. They estimate this will increase operating income in 2025 by about $709 billion.
Okay, but the other change goes the other way.
Exactly. For a subset of servers and networking equipment, they're decreasing the useful life from 6 years down to 5 years.
And that reduces profit.
Expected to, yes.
Yeah.
Based on the assets they had at the end of 2024, they figure this will decrease 2025 operating income by around $0.7 billion.
And did they say why they're shortening the life of those servers?
They did. The report explicitly cites the increased pace of technology development, especially in AI and machine learning.
Wow. So AI innovation is making their servers obsolete faster, basically.
That's a pretty direct signal, yeah. A powerful insight tucked away in accounting estimates.
And there was something about accelerated depreciation from retiring equipment early, too.
Right. In Q4 2024, they took a $920 million hit from deciding to retire certain servers and network gear early.
And that also impacts 2025.
Expected to decrease 2025 operating income by another $0.6 billion or so.
So netting all those changes out for 2025, the longer life for heavy equipment, shorter life for some servers, the early retirements, the overall impact is actually a decrease in operating income.
Based on these estimates, yes. Primarily driven by that faster turnover assumption for certain tech gear.
And it's kind of ironic because they increased server life just the year before.
Exactly. The report notes that effective Jan 1, 2024, they went from 5 years to 6 years for servers. That change helped their 2024 results significantly cut depreciation by $3.2 billion, boosted net income by $2.5 billion.
So 2024 helped by longer server life, but now driven by AI speed, they're shortening it for some gear while other stuff lasts longer. Dynamic.
Absolutely reflects managing assets through different tech cycles. Now, looking at broader spending, cash capital expenditures, CapEx, were huge in 2024.
How huge?
$77.7 billion. That's way up from $48.1 billion in 2023. Massive jump.
Where's that CapEx going?
Mostly into technology infrastructure, the bulk of that supporting AWS.
And also expanding their fulfillment network capacity.
And they expect CapEx to go up again in 2025. That's the forecast. Driven primarily by more investment in tech infrastructure, just reinforces this picture of relentless, massive investment in their core tech and logistics space.
They were active in acquisitions and investments, too.
Spent $7.1 billion in cash on M&A and investments in 2024. Remember the One Medical Healthcare acquisition for $3.5 billion cash in 2023?
Right. What was big in 2024?
A major focus highlighted is their big investment in Anthropic, the AI company, done through convertible notes.
How much did they put in?
$1.25 billion in Q3 23, then $2.75 billion in Q1 24, another $1.3 billion in Q4 24, and they plan for another $2.7 billion by the end of 2025.
Wow. That is a massive bet on AI.
Clearly a significant strategic investment. Despite all this spending, the report states their belief they have enough cash and borrowing ability for at least the next 12 months.
They also talk about free cash flow. How do they define that?
Cash from operations minus net purchases of property and equipment. They note they include assets bought using finance leases in this calculation.
And they caution it's not purely discretionary cash.
Right. It's a metric they use, partly to show the cash impact of all that heavy capital spending.
Finally, what's their guidance for the first quarter of 2025?
They're projecting net sales between $151 billion and $155.5 billion. That's 5% to 9% growth.
But expecting currency headwinds again.
Yeah, a big unfavorable FX impact expected, around $2.1 billion off sales. Operating income forecast is between $14 billion and $18 billion. For comparison, it was $15.3 billion in Q1 2024.
Okay, one last section to touch on briefly, item 9A, trust and control. This is about internal controls over financial reporting.
Right. Sounds dry, but it's crucial for trusting all those numbers we just talked about.
Yeah.
It's basically their report card on the systems ensuring accurate financials.
And what's the verdict?
They state that management, under CEO-CFO supervision, evaluated their disclosure controls and procedures. Conclusion. Effective as of year-end 2024, providing reasonable assurance that info gets recorded and reported properly and on time.
And management also assessed their internal controls over financial reporting itself.
Yes, using that standard COSO framework. Their conclusion, also effective as of December 31st, 2024, providing reasonable assurance about the reliability of the financial statements.
And the independent auditor, Ernst & Young, agreed.
They did. They audited Amazon's internal controls and issued an unqualified opinion, the best kind, meaning they found Amazon maintained effective controls in all material respects.
So, a good degree of confidence there, but there's always a caveat.
Always. They include the standard disclaimer. Any control system only provides reasonable assurance, not absolute assurance. It can't prevent or detect every single error or instance of fraud, just an acknowledgement of inherent limits.
So pulling this all together, this deep dive into the 10K, it really shows the immense scale and complexity, doesn't it? There's so much more than just a store.
Absolutely. Serving this whole ecosystem, consumers, sellers, enterprises, creators, advertisers, and facing intense competition across, well, almost every sector imaginable.
And we saw the significant risks they're navigating. Complex global regulations, especially China and India, operational challenges from growth, managing inventory.
Plus the legal battles, the tax disputes, the constant pressure from regulators. It's a minefield.
And the financials underscore those massive ongoing investments, especially in tech infrastructure for AWS, and huge strategic bets like Anthropic and AI, while also dealing with things like changing depreciation based on tech speed.
Yeah, going straight to this document, it cuts through the noise. You get the detailed picture, the challenges as they see them, where the money's really flowing. It's the reality behind the headlines.
Hopefully diving into this with us has given you some maybe surprising facts, definitely some important insights, without you having to read hundreds of pages. A clearer picture straight from the source.
And maybe a final thought to leave you with, something that really jumped out from this document. Think about how the sheer speed of tech change, especially AI, is hitting this company so hard, it's literally changing how they account for their core servers, while driving multi-billion-dollar bets on that same future tech. It just highlights this incredible, relentless pressure to innovate constantly, just to stay in the game.